It is Wednesday, September 6th. That's the date. And the Give and Go Show is back in your life. My name is Griffin Queen, as always, joined by Matt Modi and Elliot Chiazzani. Still no Matt Ferentinos. He is still in Italy. Before we get going, he's not on this one, so we'll make sure that we say it when he gets back in town. Congratulations to Matt Ferentinos on joining the group of engaged guys on this show, on this pod. I'm engaged. Modi's engaged. Ferentinos is now engaged. Congratulations to him and his fiance. Elliot, you've been married for like 7 years, so you don't get a congratulations. Is that right? Have you been married 7 years? Am I right about that?
I think you're way off. I think it's like 5.
That can't
way
be
off.
That cannot be true. Your child is like 5.
Oh, you're right. So 6?
I'm pretty sure it's 6 or 7, buddy. We don't need to get into it. If you're joining us today, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure, if you're not already subscribed on YouTube, click the subscribe button, comment below with any questions or comments you might have. Click that like button so that we pop up in the algorithm with this video. Make sure you're following us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, any of the different social media platforms. OnlyFans, you get very different content there. You can look forward to that, or you can not look forward to that. Entirely up to you. Today, we're going to be talking about the new One Piece live action series that debuted on Netflix about a week ago. We're going to be talking about Christian Wood finally going to a team this offseason. He was recently picked up in the past 24 hours by the Los Angeles Lakers. He got a 2-year deal with a player option in the second year. And we are going to talk about some rule changes that we would like to introduce, I believe, in the NBA. I don't know if we said basketball as a whole. I think it was just the NBA.
Yeah, NBA.
Cool. We're going to do all that. Should be a good episode. We're going to kick it off with One Piece. I think you guys, we're all at relatively similar points. I know I'm on episode 5. Modi, where are you in the show right now?
So I've seen the first 4. So I don't know if that's I'm on 4 or I'm on 5. But yeah, I've seen the first 4.
I'm almost done. I started the last episode. I'm like 2 minutes into the last episode.
Oh, so you were not kidding when you said that you were going to finish it during the time that the pod was recording?
Yeah.
He's watching it right
that seemed like a joke, making fun of the fact that you had to record a podcast today. But maybe I was wrong about that. Maybe that was just you.
Log off. I'm finishing it.
Got it. Okay. Well, today we're just going to talk about episodes 1 and 2. You know, we don't want to spoil anything for anybody that might watch this either live or after the fact that has not caught up on the show yet. Just to jump into it, though, I'm loving it. I cannot believe how good this show is. I can't believe how well One Piece of all manga anime shows has translated to live action. If you were to ask me any anime that would not translate to live action, I would have told you One Piece, and yet it's the best live action reimagining that I've seen yet.
Yeah, I mean, especially after like Death Note was like the one that people said this should be fine to adapt to live action, and like Cowboy Bebop thought like that should be fine to adapt to live action, and both of those were terrible. They were
real bad. Although I'll say the Japanese version of Death Note was not terrible. It was fine. It wasn't great, but it was fine. The Netflix American version with like the little emo version of Light, atrocious. The worst thing I've ever watched.
Yeah, I heard it was really bad. I never watched it. I saw the anime, but I heard the live action was terrible.
Yeah, 0 out of 10 would not recommend. So 2 episodes in, you know, obviously we've been introduced to a couple members of the crew. We've been introduced to Nami, been introduced to Zoro. So far, I feel really good about their characterization. You know, there's been some changes. Nami's getting introduced a little bit earlier than she was otherwise. There already seems to be more of a dynamic between her and Zoro, which is a little bit of a change where they're getting more screen time together. Any thoughts, any complaints about these first 2 episodes? Modi, anything you think that they could have changed, should have changed, should not have changed?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a complaint. I would say a couple of things. I feel like they kind of nerfed Luffy a little bit because I feel like he's like quite obviously in the manga and the anime the strongest one. Him and like Zoro, which Zoro they did make super strong. Nerfy, they kind of nerfed him a little bit. But then I also like I'm remembering there are certain times where he like gets his ass saved by the crew. So I don't know how much of that is just like the way it's interpreted on screen versus like what we think of him in the anime. But that's one complaint, not in this, even the complaint, just like a note. And then I feel like they made Buggy the pirate way scarier than he is in the anime, where he's like a joke. I don't know. Elliot, you're caught up, right? On the manga. Yeah. Griffin, I know you're not. I don't know how far you are, but like, and so I don't want to.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say what I feel like you're gonna say.
Yeah. Okay. No, I wasn't going to say exactly.
I know probably a little bit about what you're going to say, just because social media is a terrible, awful place where people spoil things. But we don't need to jump into, post time skip in the manga. We don't need to be looking at stuff in like issues 1000 or whatever.
Right. Just that, like, I feel like they made him way scarier in the live action, which like the actor was good. The CGI and everything was good. Like legitimately made him look scary. That's just not how he was in the OG and in the anime. That's all. But
can I say something about Buggy so far?
What?
Frustratingly handsome. You can tell what a good looking guy he is underneath the makeup, even with like the fake nose and everything on there. Like you look at him and I'm like, your chin could cut glass. Like I don't want to look at Buggy the Clown. And like, I think he's done a great job so far. And I think the actor's got a lot of presence to him. Yeah. But I don't want to look at Buggy the Clown and be like, I'm uglier than Buggy the Clown.
Yeah. And I was also thinking like clowns are scary. Like, so they kind of had to make him look scary. And like, I guess, if people are watching it without knowing much about the manga, you're going to want the clown to be scary. But it was just like, this is not the Buggy that I remember from the anime.
I mean, so people have said that because he gets a little bit goofier going on. His first like appearance, he's like a genuine threat. Like he's not a total goofball.
Yeah,
like, and he's blowing up parts of the town indiscriminately just to fuck people's lives up. So I feel like after Luffy beats him, he becomes a joke for a significant period of time.
Yeah, maybe.
And then in the live action, maybe he's a little bit more sinister early on. I'm not sure.
I also my one complaint about Buggy is at least the first like 10 minutes he's on screen, I feel like he's doing like a Heath Ledger Joker impression. Like he grows into his own thing a little bit throughout the episode, and but the first couple scenes, I'm like, I've seen this clown before.
Yeah, I commented to Julia when he was first on screen, particularly the way they have like the makeup on his face being kind of messy and looking like he might have some scars under there and everything. It's definitely reminiscent of Heath Ledger's Joker. He went in a different direction as the episode goes on. But I like it so far. I mean, I think I want to see more of Buggy, which I'll tell you, when I first started One Piece, the anime, 20 years ago or whatever it was, I did not want to see more of Buggy after his initial introduction. I thought he was a completely uninteresting waste of a character.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I think there's just like the clown aspect of it. The clowns are creepy. So in the anime, I mean, I don't really remember how I felt because I read it first before watching the anime. And I started this endeavor like a little less than a year ago. And I like binged it in like 6 weeks. So a lot of stuff kind of blends together, especially at the very, very beginning. But no, I'm loving it. Like, I think the first episode, I mean, they've all been good. I've seen the first 4. They've all been good. But the first one, I felt like I have enjoyed the most because I was super nervous going into it because I mentioned this, I don't know, on the pod or just on our private chat, but I did not like the trailer. I thought it looked fan made and cheap, and the CGI, just everything looked bad. So that was what I was nervous about when I was watching it. And then within 10 minutes of the first episode, I was like, wait, this is good. Like the acting's good. The like Kobe, I thought was well casted and well acted. Luffy, despite the fact that I think they nerfed him a little bit, I think the acting's good. Everything is way less cheesy and, for lack of a better word, fan made, looking like it's fan made than I was expecting.
Yeah. I remember when the trailers came out. I think we definitely had a full range of reactions to them in our group chat for the Give and Go show. I think Ferentinos was probably somewhere in the middle. I don't know if One Piece is one of his favorites, but I think he was in the middle. Elliot, I don't really remember where you landed. I was really excited based on not necessarily the trailers, but the TikTok interviews that I was seeing with the actors, because it seemed like they were really connecting with their characters and they were really pumped to be a part of the show, which gave me a lot of positive feelings about it. And then you were on the direction of like, this looks cheesy. This looks like it's a fan made thing, which I get because I think the trailers were cut that way. I don't think that they were the best looking trailers ever. And to some extent, I mean, the show, not that I'm an expert on cinematography, but it does have that Netflix feel where there's a lot of close in shots on the faces. There's a lot of stuff that they do to kind of hide the CGI backgrounds. There are definitely some wigs that you'll see on characters, both in the first 2 episodes and as you go on, where you're like, okay, like this isn't how a human being's hair should look. But that's kind of One Piece. And I'm very okay with that just because of how bizarre and off the wall it is as a property as a whole. And my great hope, I don't know how long this show is going to go, is that stuff like that, like wigs and costuming and things like that, will improve as time goes on, particularly seeing the reception that this show is getting, where it very well might be the first genuinely successful live action anime adaptation.
Yeah, the trailer, it just reminded me, like I've seen Naruto fan made trailers and it's exactly what it reminded me of. But I mean, it's clearly not that. And yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the manga is going to go on forever. So I don't know if they're planning on like trying condensing like hundreds of episodes into one season like they're doing for this season. So I am curious with how they go about it. But I hope that it gets like the Stranger Things type budget and that like, because the Stranger Things, if you go from season 1 to season 4. Go ahead, Elliot.
The season 1 budget was apparently $140 million, which is the same as Game of Thrones. Like,
yeah, but I think Griffin, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the majority of that just like the marketing of it?
So my understanding of it was that a lot of that was the preemptive marketing. Hopefully at a certain point, it turns to word of mouth. They're probably not going to be doing, I mean, the run up for this one, like the TikTok stuff that I mentioned, these guys have been doing like a world tour. They premiered and had good numbers in a lot of countries for Netflix. I imagine now that people are going to connect with a lot of like these actors and with this property as a live action thing, that will not really be the case for future seasons. I know for certain things like the Lord of the Rings show, which had an absolutely absurd budget for the first year, a lot of that was because they were building sets that they would use for future seasons. For One Piece, that's not really going to be the case because they're constantly in new locations. But like, we haven't gotten to this point yet, and this is not really a spoiler. Once they get their ship, they're going to continue to reuse the set for that ship for a number of years. So that's probably, something, and costuming, that's going to be a lot of reusing.
No, they get
at a certain point.
Every island they get new costumes.
And I was saying to Julia, I really like, this is one of the things that like I don't often favor live action over anime for this type of property. This is a time where I favor live action because in anime, you're going to have very, very, very few actual like costume changes throughout because it's entirely new animations and character portraits and everything that they're going to have to make for characters. In live action, it's just you put on different clothes and whatever those clothes cost is what it is. It doesn't absolutely change the fundamental nature of the job. So the fact that the Straw Hat Pirates are going to be able to dress to the nines and wear a lot of the stuff that you see on like the covers of the different manga issues, that excites me a lot because I love anime fashion. And I think it's so cool that they're going to be able to have a lot of stuff that we've never actually seen.
Yeah, whoever their like costume designer was, it did like an amazing job. Like some of the like you can pause the show and it looks just like it came like right off the like a cover from a volume. Like they're real good.
Yeah. So do we think that other long-running animes are going to kind of take this template and try to find like Naruto or Bleach or, I mean, Full Metal is not as long-running. I think My Hero, I've never watched it. Academia, whatever.
My Hero Academia.
Yeah, Academia. That's the word I couldn't pronounce. Like, do we think that
Boku no Hero, I think is what it is in Japanese. Elliot could probably correct me on that.
I mean that it's something like that. I don't know the exact Japanese. So I would say that it is unlikely. Like, I think what really has made One Piece stand out is that Oda, whatever, I don't know his last name.
Eiichiro.
Yeah, the creator of the manga has been heavily involved like from the beginning, and like it took the production on the show has taken a long time because he really wanted to ensure that it was not going to be crap. Like the other anime adaptations we've talked about, it feels like whoever was making it sort of was inspired by something and then wanted to do their own thing. They thought what they could do would be better. And this is really not that at all. This is saying this is something different, but we want to really like respect the original. This is its own thing, but we're really, really, really fans of the original.
Yeah, but couldn't, I mean, theoretically, if the writer of Naruto, I forget the guy's name, was interested, couldn't he do the same thing that Oda did?
Yeah, he needs the money. Like I don't think Netflix is going to pay out for a second
one.
Budget.
But what if, like, you know,
particularly Hulu, as like the streaming, I don't know, environment changes, and a lot of these streamers are realizing that it's probably not the best idea to spend this kind of money. I'm not saying Naruto could not happen. I'm not saying Bleach could not happen, or I think a good one would probably be Full Metal, which has had Japanese adaptations. One Piece in particular of all of those has made so much money and is such a merchandising kingpin that I can kind of understand why it was chosen by Netflix to be like this huge franchise live action adaptation. Not to say the other ones don't make a ton of money, but One Piece is just like head and shoulders above everything else. They're 25 years in at this point, and I think Elliot had mentioned it. With the exception of a few months or maybe a couple years in there, it has been the #1 grossing manga and anime property for every year of those 25 years. Like it's the level of like Disney properties. So it's kind of like right place, right time, right property. But if this does well, I mean, there's no reason to rule out other things happening. I think there's definitely both long form shonen like the Narutos and the Bleaches that could be translated. There's also a bunch of like 13 to 26 episodes stuff.
Yeah, you could do a mini series. Yeah, you could do a mini series. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking if Netflix doesn't want to do it, they don't want to show the same budget. Why not if Hulu or any of these other streaming services see the success that Netflix has and say, oh, maybe we should try and get part of that audience, especially because Hulu has a decent amount of anime on it. So, I mean, that's just kind of a thought. I think we live in such a copycat world that I could just see one company seeing the success that Netflix has. And it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know if they even have this data, if they can attribute signups specific to a TV show. But if they see data that helps with that, or if it helps with retention, which I know all these streaming services are struggling with. Like I said, nothing's the level of One Piece, but you're kind of hoping to get a fraction of the audience if you're doing a Naruto or a Bleach.
Sure. Yeah. And this will be my last point on this. The point that you just made, if other companies are going to try and copycat this, my only worry is that they are, and they're going to learn all of the wrong lessons from this, like they so often do. And they're going to say, people just want anime live action adaptations, or they want cartoon live action adaptations. And they have none of the heart. They have none of the soul. They don't make any effort to actually try and translate the eccentricities of what makes anime so enjoyable for such a massive part of the populace. And they do what Netflix did previously, like with Death Note, and they just make this ugly crime procedural type of shit, or
that's
like
fair.
Weird emo teenager shit. And it's like, no one wants that. The reason we like this is because of what it is. You don't need to translate it for an American audience based on what you think. Like, we know what we like, and we like it the way it is. So try and do it the way it is. And if it fails, it is what it is. But don't look at this and say we need things translated specifically for an American audience, because clearly, I think I saw the list, it was like 85 countries where it was #1. A lot of the world likes this the way it is.
Yeah.
So don't change anything. Just trust the source material.
Yeah, I think they probably need the creator of these mangas to be on to like help them through it, like Oda did, because the only way you're going to be able to truly capture the character essence and stuff is if you have someone there that is like an OG, for lack of a better word.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Any final thoughts on One Piece live action? You guys want to move on?
I think we said enough. Definitely, if you're a fan of the anime or manga and haven't watched it somehow already, definitely it works. And I know you guys are both trying to get significant others who have no experience with it to watch it, and they're enjoying it as well. So
yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, that's one of my, I guess, best recommendations I can give for it. Granted, Julia does like some anime, but I've tried to get her into the One Piece anime multiple times, and it just has never connected. The live action is connecting. We're 5 episodes in. We've got a few to go, and she was the one last night when we were watching, pushing to watch more episodes. So even if you don't think you might like it, give it a shot. Could not be for you, but it's worth trying to dive into and discovering this world that a lot of us have been in love with for literal decades at this point.
Yeah. I haven't gotten Kate to watch it yet, but she said she will. We just haven't had time. We have friends visiting life,
sure.
But she'll watch it. She said she would.
All right, fantastic. Let's move on to some NBA news. Let's get back to the give and go portion of this, which is talking about basketball. Christian Wood announced yesterday at sometime in the evening that he was going to the Lakers. Like I'd mentioned at the top of the episode, 2-year deal. He has a player option in the second year. It is a minimum deal. Like he's getting paid, I think, $2 million this season, maybe just under 3 next season. This is kind of what everybody thought his market was. There's been a lot made of the fact that in an 8-year career, Christian Wood is now on his 8th or 9th team. To some extent, and I don't know how familiar the two of you are with Christian Wood, to some extent, I understand why he's on a minimum. He is kind of the definition of quote unquote not a winning player. You look at his stats and they're super gaudy. I mean, there was a point where he was scoring 20 points per game, putting up 8 rebounds, a couple blocks, wasn't turning the ball over a ton based on his usage rate. And still the team that he did that with, the Rockets, did not want to retain his services, which is kind of crazy considering he's one of the most effective offensive big men in basketball. There's serious defensive deficiencies with Christian Wood. There's serious attitude issues. A lot of teams have talked about the fact that not only is he not a bad defender, he's a truly terrible defender. He's a guy who thinks his role should be bigger than it is. All of this is probably true. I'm not going to say that none of this is true. I think if you actually go down the list of teams that he's played for, a lot of it was early in his career. It was like 15 to 20 game stints where he was back and forth from their G League teams. That's not going to be reflected on his basketball reference like box scores. Not going to see that he was playing for these G League teams. He is the definition on this Lakers team, to me, of a low-risk, high-reward player. Because if things don't work out, he's on a minimum. Basically exactly what we wanted Russell Westbrook to be on, where if things don't work, you can cut him. And it costs you nothing, and it doesn't affect your cap, and you can pay out his money and you go somewhere else because every owner in the NBA can afford a couple $1 million. And if things work out, if LeBron James can get him in line and they've got a 6'10" big coming off the bench who can score between 15 and 20 points a game, or who you can potentially pair with Anthony Davis to have a Twin Towers combo going on, you could conceivably have what you've been looking for this entire time since Dwight Howard and
JaVale
McGee. Why can I never remember JaVale?
It's always JaVale.
He's played for the Wizards. He's played for the Lakers. He's won multiple titles. I can never remember JaVale McGee's name. I always want to say KCP or Willie Cauley-Stein, and I'm not sure why. You have a big to pair with AD in a way you kind of haven't these past few years. Andre Drummond experiment didn't work because Anthony Davis was hurt for most of it. The Trez Harrell experiment didn't work because Trez Harrell sucks at basketball and Anthony Davis was hurt for a lot of it. There really hasn't been a quality big to pair with Anthony Davis since then. Curious how both of you feel about this, if you have any thoughts at all. I don't know if this is a game changer for the Lakers. I personally think it could be, but that could be my Lakers fandom talking.
LA, you want to go first or you want me?
Yeah, I mean, also like getting him for like a minimum contract, I think is like you said, it's low risk, high reward. I was shocked that like no one wanted to give him like $5 million a year. Maybe I don't know if he was talking to anyone and turned something like that down and wants to play for like the Lakers specifically, or a chance with a championship team. But like having the ability to score 20 points a game on like high efficiency, like he's not like jacking up shots. He was shooting 50%. He's shooting like 38% from three on 5 shots a game, like that. Like he can score like real well. It's not like one of those chuckers who pads the stat line. So I mean, I think there's nothing that could go wrong there, especially like the Lakers. Like what's going to happen if the chemistry gets messed up? Like not a big deal. LeBron will just get rid of everyone.
I mean, he's done that before.
That's true. Yeah, we've been down that road. We know how it ends in a title berth.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that I don't think it's a bad signing by any means because there's literally no risk with the minimum. I still think you guys are overrating Christian Wood. Like the season that he scored 21 points was he played 41 games and he played 32 minutes a game. Like he's just not going to have that type of playing time. And I think there's a reason why every team that wants him cannot wait to get rid of him. He just wears out his welcome. He's been on record saying that he has work ethic issues, that he's got like attitude issues. I just think he's the worst type of player that you want on your basketball team. He doesn't play defense. He's bad at defense. He doesn't try on defense. And on offense, he thinks that everything should go through him and that he should be the leading shot maker or shot taker, whatever it may be. So I don't think it's going to end in Russell Westbrook implosion, but I just think that I just don't agree necessarily that the ceiling's there. Like he's a talented player, and yes, sure, if he puts his head on straight and becomes a different person. But I just think that the book's kind of out on him, and he's just a losing player. Like he doesn't contribute to winning. The Mavericks needed a center so badly, and they could not stand Christian Wood. And Devin, what's their head coach's name? Devin Ham or something? Darvin Ham? Yeah.
The Lakers.
Yeah, the Lakers head coach. Like he's got Jason Kidd vibes, where he's just an old school guy it's just not going to fly with him. Like he's not going to have the patience for his defense. He's not going to have the patience for his offense. And LeBron's going to hate his guts too. So again, this isn't me killing the Lakers for the signing. This is me killing the player, and that he's just a losing player. Like the Mavericks needed someone like him. The Rockets could not have wanted to get rid of him quicker. Like he's just wearing out his welcome everywhere he's gone because he doesn't have the work ethic. He doesn't have what it takes mentally to be an NBA player.
Yeah. And all that's there. And normally I disagree with the losing player narrative because I think so much of it is who drafted you, who you played next to, who was your coach, was your organization like, what role were you given? But with Christian Wood, we have verifiably seen that he is in fact a losing player. The only reason that the two reasons that I feel good about is, like you mentioned, and like we've all mentioned, it doesn't cost a lot of money. So if you need to get rid of him, you can. And there's the potential for the LeBron James effect that you've seen with other players where, yeah, Luka Doncic and Jason Kidd might not have been able to get it in line. But LeBron James going into year 21 or 22 or whatever it might be, multiple MVPs, 4 titles, arguably a top 2 player of all time. Like if anyone is going to get this guy in line, he's going to be at the top of the list. Granted, he might not be able to do it. And that's a very real possibility. But if somebody were to do it, that's the type of guy that I would want to give it a shot. If this doesn't work, I think Christian Wood is probably out of the league and he's playing in China by, March. I also think he's probably going to have such a short leash that if we don't see this working, he's likely going to be out of the league soon after Christmas. I mean, I don't think they're going to wait till the trade deadline. I don't think they're going to try and get value back on him. They're just going to cut him.
They're going to cut him because there's no reason to shop him. He's not due any money. It's not really that big of a deal if they cut him. Yeah,
the three of us could pay out his contract.
Yeah, literally. I don't know. He's 27. He's been in the league since 2015. I think he kind of just is who he is.
Yeah, not literally for anyone who is watching right now. We do not have millions of dollars. But if you subscribe to us on YouTube and you follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, we will be that much closer to being able to sign players like Christian Wood at the minimum.
We could be.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he reminds me of like the top 5 draft pick who like flames out of one team, a team signs them, they're like, oh, like they were a top 5 draft pick, maybe we can fix them. Flames out again, except that he actually like he has the stats to back up that like maybe he can do something. Like you think about like Michael K. Gilchrist or Okafor or Stanley Johnson, those type of players who like they had the potential and just like it wasn't coming together as an NBA player, but teams kept giving him chances and it just kept not working out. But like they never proved that like they could do it, other than that they were a high draft pick.
Sure.
So that's the only reason I think like maybe like someone can find some use for him. I was surprised that it took this long for someone to give him this low of money. Like I thought maybe he was holding out for like a real contract.
I mean, we're seeing it a little bit right now with Kelly Oubre as well. Kelly Oubre has had a number of between like 18 and 21 point per game seasons, but he's the definition of a losing player. The only place where he ever played within any sort of role was surprisingly in Washington, although part of that was because that's where he was drafted and he was far enough down the depth chart behind Bradley Beal and John Wall that I think he didn't have an unrealistic internal expectation for himself just yet. He's a young player who can, at least to some degree, score the ball and play a little bit of defense. And no one's interested in signing him, even for a minimum, because he is, like Modi mentioned, a losing player. Christian Wood is if Christian Wood was not a big man, I think he'd be in the same position as Kelly Oubre right now. There's enough, 6'8" wings who kind of score the ball and who don't really do anything else well that are out of the league within a few years, whereas there's kind of a lack of talent at the center position right now outside of the top like 10 to 12 guys. And the 10 to 12 guys are all getting the shit kicked out of them every single game. So you're trying to load up on that position as much as you can.
Yeah.
I hope it worked out, but that's me as a Lakers fan. If it doesn't, I don't think any of us are going to be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the odds are that it doesn't work out. And yeah, I mean, he's got talent. He definitely has talent for sure. I never once doubted that. He just has all of the issues that you don't want the guy on your team.
Sure. All right. I think we've talked enough about Christian Wood. We actually spent like 10 minutes on Christian Wood, which is probably 8 minutes more than most people are going to spend on him this week.
It's true.
Elliot, you wanted to talk rule changes in the NBA, so I'm going to let you run this next portion.
Technically, it was my idea, but we can still.
Yeah, I wanted to run it. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I always assume anything that has to do with rules or minutia or like how to do something, that's like Elliot's lane. That's where he lives. He's like a dungeon master's like textbook. So Modi, you deserve your credit for the idea, but I'm still going to let Elliot do it because this is where he lives. This is where he eats.
With me.
All right. I mean, so this is like our little list night crossover. We did do this. Or I think we did all sports rules on
we did all sports.
It was all sports, and some of them, I'm not saying they were bad, were wacky. Like this is the goal
absurd.
of this.
No, they were absurd.
Yeah, the goal of this is not to be wacky. It's for legitimate rule changes, to be clear. Anyway,
I think we had one that involved multiple different like pools being placed on the court.
One of them
and
was
also trampolines.
One of them was the hoop was always moving.
Well, that's a good idea. That's objectively a really good idea. I don't know why you're calling that one out specifically. That would make basketball better.
All right. So I figure we'll sort of each say one and just go around as long as we have one.
And how many are we doing? We're doing
we said three. In case you guys steal any.
Sure. I'll tell you this. This is a little inside baseball. I didn't prepare any, but I'm going entirely off the dome because I think about this all the time.
As do I. And I feel like we've hinted about it so much.
We've definitely mentioned some of these.
Yeah.
So there might be some crossover just on things that we've talked about before. And look, if we have a ton after we're done with this, we'll do it again when Ferentinos is back on the pod.
There we go. All right, Elliot, what do you got?
All right, so I'm going to start us off. So my number one, this might be a little bit controversial, but I think playoff series should be 5 games. I think 7 is too many games. I get bored, and I don't think you need that many games. I think you can decide a winner in 5.
I have an immediate question for you.
Yeah.
You said playoff series. You mean every round, including the finals? Or okay. Oh,
I mean, if you want to do finals 7, like I don't care. I think like the NBA playoffs take so long that as soon as my team gets eliminated, I'll like keep watching like a little bit, but I do not have the endurance to watch like rounds 3 and 4. Like I'll go back when the finals happen, but like when my team gets bounced round 1, I'm just like, oh my god, now there's like 2 more months of basketball that I don't really care about.
So go. No, so I have my first one. My one that I think I like the most is like playoff changes, and I have a variation of yours where instead of every single series is 5 games instead of 7, I have the first round only 1 versus 8 and 2 versus 7 is a 5 game series. I do think there's some 3, 6, and 4, 5 that are good and deserve 7 games. And I think anything beyond that should be 7 games. But the majority of the 1 versus 8 and 2 versus 7 are just snooze fests that are just a total waste of time. Like for every Heat beating the Bucks, there's a million Magic getting annihilated by the Bucks, Magic losing to the Raptors. There's a million of those. So I just don't think that they're necessary. And I think that people are going to say like, oh, well, what happens if like someone's down 3-1 and then goes on a comeback? Like teams are just going to take the beginning part of the series more seriously. Like so many teams punt game 1s. Like that's a notorious LeBron thing. That's just not going to happen anymore. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal.
Yeah. So I did check this. There were two series that would have flip flopped if you were in 5 games instead of 7. Like assuming that like a team did
in this most recent year.
Yeah, this most recent. So like,
so you're telling me the Sixers should be celebrating a conference finals berth?
Exactly. Yeah,
I could be celebrating a finals berth.
True. I'm going to hang the banner behind me. Theoretically, the Sixers.
Put the banner up.
Yeah. All right. So I have. This is kind of cheating. I have 3 different playoff changes. That was one of them. My next one. This is all under the category of playoff changes. In a 7-game series, home team plays 5 home games instead of 4. It goes 3-2-2. It makes people care more about actually being the home team and getting the higher seed, and it eliminates travel, especially in series where they're farther away from each other. And then also, the higher seed gets to pick their opponent, but I will also accept reseeding based on what happened in the previous round. The NFL does it. MLB does it. It's not that complicated to just reseed and always have the higher ranked seed play the lower ranked seed. Like we shouldn't have situations where the Sixers and Celtics are playing in the second round at the 2-3, and then the 5 versus 8 are playing each other in the same round. Like I just think that's dumb. Not even a biased Sixers fan. Like I just don't think that should happen. I don't think possibly the best round of that conference, which ended up not being the case. Like Heat Celtics was awesome, but I don't think that even should be possible in the second round. So those are my 3 playoff specific changes. It would make teams care more about the regular season. It would make being the higher seed way more valuable because A, your first round is fewer games. B, you get more home games, and C, you get the possibility of playing a worse team as you go further on.
Sure. It makes sense to me, particularly the 3 or the 5 home games and 2 away games. The only thing that I would say to that one is I think you mentioned 3-2-2, right?
Yeah.
See, I think I would prefer. I think not even necessarily. I think the NBA would prefer if they were to ever do this to be 2-2-3.
Fair. I would accept
that way
that
you're
as
getting
well.
yeah. Because then you're getting home revenue in both places twice, and then
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. And like the 3,
I don't know why I'm thinking of the money of these rules, but I'm thinking like, how does this do for viewership?
I think that's reasonable.
I think starting with 3 home games in a row is going to be a huge advantage. But I do dislike that, like the way it is now. Like if you lose at home at the beginning, you've lost home field like advantage already. So I do think having an extra game would be good.
Yeah. I can definitely see it both ways.
2-2-3 makes sense.
Basically all changes in the playoffs that we can come up with, even if they're not like ones that I necessarily agree with. I think that there is something fundamentally broken about the NBA playoffs right now. I think a lot of people see it. I mean, there's something fundamentally broken about the NBA season. 82 is too long. Guys get too hurt. Playoffs go on too long. The fact that we're watching basketball from October to June, as much as I love basketball, I want to do that. Most people don't want to do that. Like, it's just too much. there's a lot there with scheduling that could really be fixed.
The one point, and I meant to mention this, Elliot's right. The playoffs are too long. Like it shouldn't. April to June is just too long for the playoffs. So I meant to mention that, but yeah, like you think of like what happens in the first round versus when you're in the finals, it might as well be 3 lifetimes ago.
Yeah. Well, to Elliot's point, it used to be 5-5, 7-7. And I'm pretty sure it was 5-5, 7-7. I don't think it was ever anything less than 5. That would be my preference. I want the Western and Eastern Conference Finals to be 7. I want the finals to be 7. And the large part of why I want each conference finals to be 7 is because sometimes those are the 2 best teams. A lot of times we're not seeing the 2 best teams in the finals. So I do think 7 is going to give us the best idea of who's the actual best team in each conference. But for the first round in particular, 5. I'd even take 3. Like I'd be fine with 3 games in the first round. Now we've added in the play-in, so there's some guys coming in having already played 2 games, and I like watching the play-in because in a lot of times it's single elimination, but it's adding even more games. And now it's just like it's so much. It's so many games.
It's too many. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hate the first round, three games. Like there's so many 1-8, 2-7 matchups that are just pointless.
Yeah. We've got Andrew in the chat agreeing with us. He said agreed, short in the postseason. Clearly universal agreement going on right here. Let's keep it up. I'm into it.
Yep.
Any other thoughts on number of games before I move on to my first one?
All you.
All right, fantastic. Mine is not about number of games, although I might circle back to it as we go on. I do not think timeouts should advance the ball. I think it is nonsensical. I think as far as I'm aware, the NBA or basketball is the only sport where you can call a timeout and you get an advantage outside of just what occurs during that timeout, where you get to cover ground that you yourself did not actually earn. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, I understand why. It's because they want shot attempts happening more and more often, particularly late in games. But I don't like it. I think you should have to play the entire full court. Wherever you call timeout is where you should have to inbound the ball from. I would get rid of that as soon as possible if I was Adam Silver.
I never thought of that. I like it.
Yeah, I like it doesn't make any sense. Like the rule is just sort of like this random rule where like you just get to go. Like imagine in the NFL, you call timeout and you just like gain 2 yards.
You get it. Imagine you get it at half field. Like that's literally what happens in the NBA. Like that would
it's insane. No one thinks about this rule because we're so used to it. Because as far as I'm aware, it's been in place for our entire lives and probably further back than that. It makes no sense. No other sport does this except for now. Baseball does this with the ghost runners that start in extra innings. And first off, I hate that, but at least that's extra innings. At least it's like an addition to the game. So you're trying to like end the game because you've already exceeded regulation. But I fundamentally don't get it. I'm sorry.
I've never thought of that once. It makes complete sense. It makes complete sense, and that it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I want to know. I want to like look at the history. It's like, when did this change happen? Because I have no and was there any?
Why was it literally just to have more last second buzzer beaters like that? I can't think of any other reason why. Then, well, it'll be more exciting.
I mean, I guess potentially because it guarantees that the timeout is going to go longer. In which case, you have more time for commercials because you have to like both teams have to advance themselves and like I don't know. I mean, I assume it has something to do with like many changes, commercials and advertising.
Yeah.
Andrew's adding some more comments. He about the MLB.
See, I actually disagree with Andrew. We can get in this on a separate podcast. I like the ghost runner and the pitch clock because I mean anything to do to make baseball games shorter, I think is a good idea. So
including you want it in the postseason.
Oh, and I honestly didn't read that last sentence. The postseason. Yeah,
he wants him out of the postseason, which I agree with. I think as pure as you can make the game in the postseason, let's do it. But in the regular season, I'm all for it. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I should have read.
I think we both missed that last line. I think. That's smart.
You just saw the example of why I'm not a good student because I did not read the question fully.
Bunch of illiterates on this show.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, look, he's writing long comments. There's only so much we can do. To anybody who's listening to this after the fact, we are going to engage the chats a little bit if people are coming in with comments. So if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or you're watching the recorded version on YouTube after the fact, if you catch a live show, you can comment things and we are going to respond to them. If you have questions, comments, or you want a clarification on one of the things we're talking about, that's just my little thing for that. The live show, I would definitely recommend it, but we'll keep going. Elliot, let's circle back to you.
All right. So my next one is that I would eliminate defensive 3 seconds. I don't like any rules that like just restrict you from like playing. Like I want you to just play the sport. Like I don't want you to have to think about. Like I don't understand the point of that. Like if someone like again, especially like now, like centers can shoot threes. Like you're not like if you want to post up there and just hang out there, like fine, we'll just play around that.
Offensive 3 seconds is a thing too. So I'm guessing you just mean eliminate it entirely.
Yeah. I mean, the offensive 3 seconds, I feel like just never really like. Again,
It's
I would
rare.
That. Yeah,
It's rare. Yeah.
I mean, the way that the league is trended, it's so rare that we're seeing somebody spending all their time there because that's like basically a free guy that can be doing something else. If Cantor was still playing, I'm sure we'd see it more, but he's bad at basketball, so we're not seeing it. But
yeah, I like it. I think I agree with the premise of like people should just be able to play the game, and if you have like if you want to just have someone camp under the basket, then people are just going to play 5 out. Like it's just going to make people have to be creative. So I like it. I don't have much more to add.
Griffin, you like it too?
You good?
Oh, Moda, you've done all yours? We're not. Okay.
No. Sorry. No. Did you have anything to add?
Oh, to add on this one? No, I mean, I think I've talked about this actually on Twitter once or twice. I think defensive 3 seconds is pretty bad. Like I agree with you on this. I think my biggest issue with it, and it's not necessarily that I have a massive issue with the rule itself, if the rule is consistently enforced, but much like many rules in the NBA, it's not consistently enforced. And I think you can watch particularly any playoff game where certain big men, particularly if they have a little bit of star power behind them, are allowed to get away with this to as much of an extent as they want. And I'll say there's guys on my team that get away with it. Anthony Davis gets away with it constantly. And then there will be games where they clearly want the other team to win, and he won't get away with it. So the lack of consistency around the rule really is what bothers me. And if you cannot be consistent with a rule like that, where there's really not a lot of nuance to it, it's literally like a timing thing, then you should eliminate it entirely. Because it's,
I also sorry, go you can,
no, by all means, go ahead.
I think it makes like if the ref is having to like watch the play out of the corner of their eye and like count to 3 in their head, it's going to make them a worse ref.
Yeah, that's fair.
It divides their attention.
And I don't necessarily think it improves the product of the basketball that's occurred. Like I haven't ever seen somebody called for a defensive 3 seconds and been like, yeah, like this was the game changer all game, was that this guy was able to camp out here. Because I mean, in the 90s and the early 2000s, I'm sure that was a much bigger factor, particularly when the rule changes happened, because people were playing that way. But in the modern NBA, that's just not how we play. I say we as if I'm there. It's not how they play. And it just introduces controversy when there's already enough reffing controversy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair point that like anything to make it easier on the refs will improve the quality of the game, which leads to my next one. Great transition from me there. Eliminate the charge specifically on plays under the basket where the defender is just cupping their balls and doing nothing remotely resembling a basketball play. I'm not saying offensive fouls should not exist. I think if someone's running up the court and someone just gets checked, then sure, you can call that a foul. But specifically when you're not making a play under the basket, I'm talking like a very specific thing where like the whole cylinder rule, I think that's incredibly difficult to officiate in real time. Oh, did the guy get there in time? Was his foot a half inch out of the cylinder or the restricted zone, or was it? Was his feet set? Like who got to this? Whatever. It's dumb. It's not a basketball play. Let people like Giannis yam. Don't have crazy, dumb injuries if someone's under the like freaking Kyle Lowry shouldn't be able to stop Giannis from dunking because he's willing to take the charge. He's willing to take one for the team. It's so
He's got that big
stupid.
booty.
Yeah. I mean, thank God that he's got the lot of Philly in that Heine, so he can take it. But it's just so stupid. Just eliminate it.
Modi, I love you so much. I think this is actually one of the ones that I did talk about when we did the list night pod on this. And I've seen people give reasons for why the charge is necessary. The charge as it exists now is one of my least favorite things in basketball. I think it has removed so many poster opportunities and big swing moments from basketball. I hate that we, as fans who support a team who draws a charge, get really excited to watch a guy do something that has nothing to do with basketball. I hate how excited refs get to call it. That is absolutely one of my complaints about it, because they get so pumped to do that motion that I'm like, you want to call this. You don't even want to review this.
If they changed the charge call where the refs had to rub their nipples, it would be officiated so much better. Like, just don't make it as exciting to call. The refs love to call the charge. If they make it something stupid, then they're going to be like, okay, I'm not going to be so excited to do it. That's all I have to say.
Elliot, you're a huge Kyle Lowry guy. We got to get your thoughts on this one.
I mean, I love when he does it, because it's good for the team. Like, it swings the whole momentum of the team when you've got someone going in for a dunk and your guy who can't defend it just gets a turnover automatically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as an actual rule, it's not a basketball play. Like they decide to stop playing basketball.
Particularly when it's like the hyper athletic guys like Giannis who jump from so far out that literally by the time they cross into the restricted area, a guy has time to move there while he's still in the air. How are you going to penalize LeBron or Giannis or whoever for something like that when there's nothing they can do at that point?
Well, so theoretically, you have to be set before they take off.
Theoretically, which they never are. Guys are always shuffling.
Yeah. So it's silly. It's bad.
And
I also think removing it, you're probably going to cut down on reviews, which in my opinion is good for the game, because I think particularly the amount of time they spend on reviews for a fast-paced game like basketball, it turns it into a slog.
And how awesome is it when someone actually tries to block someone dunking and they successfully do it? It's amazing. Yeah. It's the coolest thing. So yeah. All right, unanimous agreement there. Griffin, go ahead.
Fantastic. Oh, I am loving this so far. Okay, I don't know if I'm going to get pushback on this one. You guys might love this one. I would think that you're probably going to like this one. Not necessarily a rule so much as a complete restructuring of how the court works. I think the court should be expanded by a couple feet on both sides. I think the 3-point line should be pushed back a couple feet, and I think it should be equidistant from the basket all the way around. I don't think it should be 2 straight lines and a half circle. It should just be a semicircle starting from where the out of bounds is. I don't think corner threes should be more valuable than threes from the top of the key. I think I don't really necessarily think there was any way we could have predicted this when they were designing the 3-point line, because it was such a minimal factor at the time, but it has led to so many guys on both teams camping out by the 3-point line, which leads to a very static, very fixed version of basketball. And I think just generally we've gone too far in the direction of 3-ball. So if there's something that makes the 3-ball either a little bit more difficult or a little bit less valuable, I want to try it out. And I know that would, obviously, again, getting into the money of it, if you push the court back a little bit, you have less room for courtside seats. But the NBA is doing fine. Like, they make a lot of money. Yeah, I think we can make peace with that. I think we collectively can make peace with each team making a few less million a year.
So just to be clear, you want to widen the court in order to fit that?
Yeah, because if you're going to push it back, I think you would have to.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see how. I wasn't sure. I don't know how else you would otherwise.
Unless you make it, because the only way to push it back and to have it be equidistant would be to widen it. Yeah. Otherwise, you would have to pull in the lines even further and then push back the top of the key, which would exacerbate the problem in my mind.
Yeah, I'm of two minds. I don't necessarily hate the idea of how do we make it so the corner three isn't so valuable, and the fact that it's the easiest shot. I just think that I think it's hard for us to conceptualize just how much it would change how basketball is played with a wider court, because there's just stuff that it makes people that are faster more valuable, and it makes people that have quicker hands less valuable because they're someone like a help defender type thing where they just have quick hands, it's less valuable. I also think that it would make Morey style basketball even more apparent, where the mid-range becomes wider. So like what was now a 3-pointer is now a mid-range shot becomes even less valuable because it's statistically a worse shot. So I think you're going to have even less people that are capable of shooting it, which will clunk up the court. And I think we get a little bit too close to 90s basketball. And I also think that it would almost create the same issue of like threes or layups and nothing in between. I think it would make that even more pronounced because, again, you're winding the court, so you're making it longer, so you're making the mid-range longer, so it's even a worse shot than it was before. So I kind of toyed with the idea of like 4-point line and stuff like that, just to make it a little bit different. I think it gets a little too wacky and circus-like with the 4-point line, so it's not actually something that I think should happen. But yeah, so that would be my pushback to yours.
Cross that off my list over here.
My big thing with the 4-point line, and if we're not going to say it as an option, I'll tell you my big complaint about it, is that you're going to have a select group of guys who, like, we're going to go so far in the specialist direction that there are going to be guys who exclusively shoot 3s and 4s, and they're going to be worse at basketball than a lot of these other guys, but they're going to be more valuable because they can just hit shots that are further out.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to a point where guys are going to be doing what Steph Curry does in really exciting moments where he pulls up from half court. Guys are going to be doing it all the time, and all the excitement's going to be gone from it. And then it's going to get to the point where we're going to be like, what are we even watching anymore? Is this basketball or is this just a long range shooting competition?
Yeah, that's fair.
We see a little bit of with 3-point shooting now.
It become like Globetrotters-esque, where it's like, is this real? Is this even real? Still basketball? No, that's fair. And like I said,
I'd be interested in seeing it as like some sort of exhibition thing that they try out, or even seeing it for like try it for a couple games in like the G League at one point. Like just tell the guys things count differently.
The 3v3 league.
Yeah, try it in the 3v3.
The 3v3 league has like specific spots on the court that are worth more, right?
Yeah, I mean, like just mathing it out, like a 4-point shot is worth twice as much as a 2-point shot. So like if you're shooting 25% from 4-point range, that's the same as shooting 50% from 2-point range. Like that is a crazy skew. Like you're just going to be chucking up shots there all the time. And like Griffin said, like you'll have like already, like when you watch like high school basketball players or college basketball players, like pulling up from those long threes, because that's what they grew up with Steph Curry, and that's what they want to emulate. Like it doesn't make you better at playing basketball.
Sure.
For sure. And like I said, I'm not necessarily pro 4-point line. I just think that
it's fun.
People suggest it pretty often.
Sure.
So like it's one that gets talked about. It's worth talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if I'm a fan of yours. I think it would change the complexion too much. But I do agree about how can we make it so people like, I don't know, PJ Tucker, and I guess he's valuable on defense. He's not the perfect example, but people that just solely stand in the corner and shoot, how do we make it so they're doing something else?
Yeah.
All right, last one.
I agree that it's a problem, but I don't think I don't think the solution really. I think the solution creates additional problems that wouldn't actually be worth it to make that change.
Sure.
Whereas all of the other ones we've suggested are like, oh yeah, let's just do it.
Last one. What do you got?
They also wouldn't. Yeah, this is the only one that's fundamentally changing the court they're playing on. It's the most expensive solution. I
also
think.
That.
All right. So this is anytime anyone ever suggests a rule change, I always want to bring this up, is I love relegation. Is like my favorite thing in sports. The G League is already sort of like becoming a little bit more of a thing. Like I think with the NBA, you have enough players that you could support 2 leagues. Like you have G League players come up and they're not all-stars, but they can play on an NBA team. You would also have to change the draft though. It would like Griffin loves making the NBA money. Like imagine if Zion Williams gets drafted and then doesn't get to play in the NBA for a year or 2 years. So this one's sort of like a 2-for-1. So I would want relegation, and I'd also want to switch. It was popular like probably a decade ago. Bill Simmons had a suggestion to change the draft to like this complicated wheel format. So like your standing doesn't matter, but like over the course of 30 years, everyone gets the number one. Like everyone gets each pick. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not familiar.
So can you explain it? Like, it's always going to be the same order where in 30 years, I know I'm guaranteed if I got the first pick this year, I know I'm going to get it 31 years from now again.
I don't remember if it randomized.
It's purely randomized.
Years, but like it is a set wheel. So like first you're the number 1 pick, and then you're like the number 30 pick, and then you're the like 8 pick, and then 16, and like every team just sort of like, I think that you would randomly like select where teams start in there. But the idea is that you're never too far away from like a top 10 pick and a bottom 10 pick.
Sure. I guess if you can still trade picks, then
yeah, you would trade and you would know
how
exactly
it would work. My initial pushback on it would be like, yeah, what if it's like, I can't think of a terrible draft off the top of my head, but you've been
Anthony
bad
Bennett
for a really long time. Yeah, it's the Anthony Bennett draft, which you probably shouldn't have gone first, but doesn't matter. And you've been bad for a really long time, and now your number 1 pick finally comes around, and okay, now we get like the worst number 1 draft pick in generations, and okay, that's it for the next 30 years, or at this point, because they're going to add 2 teams of 33 years. I get the reasoning behind it. I get Bill's reasoning. I think I get your reasoning, like why it would be a good thing, because you could definitely plan a little bit better on like what you're going to get. I think there'd probably be less incentive to tank, but absolutely be less incentive to tank.
Right. Yeah. It was. I think maybe it came out like right when the Sixers started their process thing, where it's like, okay, like how do we like prevent teams from just purposefully being bad for multiple years? Well, what if you always were incentivized to win?
Well, you prevent them from always being bad by putting them in Los Angeles or New York.
Yeah.
There can only be 4 teams in the NBA. That's how you fix it.
Everything goes back to the Sixers in the process.
I knew when he said like the Sixers. I was like, every episode we gotta talk about them. Every episode.
And I didn't, and you can't blame me. And you can't.
It's not even a little bit your fault. No, This is actually the second time we brought up the Sixers this episode, because we also talked about their conference finals, and both times it wasn't Modi.
That's true.
So I apologize on behalf of everybody that refuses to stop talking about y'all.
I honestly don't love the idea of like having the draft be totally unrelated to the team's record. I do kind of like the lottery system. I think that what they currently have now isn't perfect by any means, but if you're telling me like, let's say, this is totally off the cuff, has not been thought through, but let's say that like there are 3 different tiers that you can be in, and it rotates every year. So the first tier is 1 through 10, 11 through 20, 21 through 30. And even if you have the number 1 record in the NBA, if you're in that first tier, the worst pick you can have is 10, if that makes sense. And that's like again, like a lot of these are like a little too cartoonish and like just something that you would do in like NBA 2K that wouldn't actually make sense in real life. But I think like I just don't like the idea of having it be 0 affected by your record, because sometimes teams just aren't good, and not because they're tanking, just because they're not good. And also you can have situations where like if Zion worked out, it would have been awesome that he made the Pelicans relevant. Like Giannis, and he wasn't the number 1 overall pick, but just a player like Giannis winning in Milwaukee is I think a huge deal for the NBA. So I think it is important to have teams like that have multiple chances at the apple, like year after year. But I also recognize that like that could happen even with a randomizer, like the Hornets could get the number 1 pick in a Wemby year randomly and not have to lose for it. But I think that there is something there with like not having it be solely based on record, but I do think that it should be still factored.
Yeah, well, remember my rule is relegation. I had to, if you're doing relegation, you can't also have the draft be determined by record, because that just doesn't work. But I do want relegation. That's
relegation. I like relegation.
I'm on the same page as you, Elliot, regarding relegation. Modi, same page as you. Sorry, Elliot, to interrupt you. Your connection was getting a little weird, so I'm gonna try and jump over you a little bit.
Yeah.
We know it's not going to happen though. Granted, that could be all these rules. I support relegation. I think it makes sense. I love that it happens in football or in soccer.
In
I almost
football.
said football. I almost became very European in front of you guys. And maybe there is a world where the G League gets to a point of profitability and to a size where it is doable and justifiable, and there's a way to get the owners to agree to it. You know, maybe we completely eliminate capitalism and every team is owned by the state that they're in, and then we're fine. Then we can have relegation because it's no longer tied to an owner's whims. I know that owners are never going to push for their assets to lose value, and that's what relegation does. Is it hurts the value of your product. But I love the fundamental idea of it, and I wish that the NBA had started with it so that we could have always had it as a factor, even before like the NBA ABA merger. Like we could have brought more ABA teams over instead of only bringing 4 or whatever it was. And relegation could have always been a thing. We could have had like 24 good teams and 24 shitty ones. But I think we missed the boat. Maybe something will happen that changes that. That'd be awesome. I think it would make the game better.
I think the Americans are just too soft to have relegation be a thing.
And our billionaires are too soft.
Yeah, the egos
like
are just too.
You're a billionaire. Grow up. This is not unless you're the Bus family, in which case you've mismanaged your finances. First off, but second off, like every other team has multiple other revenue sources other than the Bus family, and the only reason they can get away with it is because they own the Lakers.
Freaking Lakers.
Who are like that's not a bad only asset to have.
Yeah,
you know. I don't feel bad for them that they don't want their assets to lose value.
So I have 2 left. One of them's obvious, so it's not even counting as an official one, but I think this is unanimous. 72 games instead of 82. 82 games is too much. Eliminate back-to-backs. Make it the punishment for specifically load management more of a punishment, and let's stop fooling around. My actual real and third one, I think Ferentinos has mentioned on the podcast, but I think that aggressive and obvious flopping should have an extreme punishment. We're talking like death penalty type punishment, not actually, but the basketball equivalent.
Killed on the court.
Yes, literally publicly executed at half court if they aggressively flop. And I'm not talking about like the Joel Embiid rip through or the Trae Young. You're driving, you hook your arm around a defender, and then you jump into them. That also should be eliminated. That's not what I'm saying should have an aggressive punishment. But like the Marcus Smarts, where you get touched and you're jumping cartoon, like, for some reason, cartoonish is the word that I
when there's a sniper in the building.
Yes, exactly. Like that stuff. If it's
there
obvious,
there should be a sniper in the building. If you do that, if you fall, the next time you get up, they put one at center mass.
Yeah, my favorite teacher at Good Counsel said that if one student every year got executed, no students would be bad.
That's probably true.
It's
although
dark.
Granted, that's like how our like criminal system works, and we still have criminals. So
that's fair.
There was kind of along those lines. There was an RNBA post years ago, and I'll send it to you guys when we get off this. I may have sent it before. That was basically what if you fouled somebody, there was like a 1 in a million chance, or 1 in 100,000, or 1 in 100,000 chance that a ref would pull out a gun and shoot you. And it's like one of the best posts I've ever read, and I'll find it when we get off this. But if you're listening to this right now, go search it, because it is one of the funniest posts I've ever seen. I support this, Modi. I support the death penalty for flopping.
Yeah, you reminded me. One of I'm assuming we all know Chris Long, the NFL player. One of his takes is that once a year, a professional athlete should be able to fight a fan if the fan pisses them off too much.
I've seen that. I think
take. Is a great take. But yeah, officially we're going with aggressive and extreme punishment for aggressive and obvious flopping.
Cool.
Yeah, who's going to push back against that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean,
Marcus
I actually really like flopping. I think it's who's going to have that take?
2011 LeBron James, who I absolutely adore, but he got real bad about it for a little while. All right. I had one more. And this is why I should have kept notes, because I'm blanking on what my other one was.
I have an honorable mention that I was gonna go for after we were all done. If you wanna think on it a little bit,
go for it. Go for it.
Foul shots. You take one shot and it's worth the equivalent of how many shots you're supposed to have. So if you get fouled on a 3-pointer, you shoot once, it's for all 3. If you get fouled on a 2-pointer, you shoot once, it's for both. Makes the game go by quicker. I think it would eliminate how annoying fouling is at the end of a game, when I think the last 2 minutes of an NBA game can be beautiful. It can also be exhausting. I think it would eliminate that a little bit if you just need someone to make one. I also think it could make it worse if you just need someone to make one, because then you have the possibility of getting no points out of it. So I think that there's something to be tweaked specifically in 2 minutes. So let's call it the first 46 minutes of the game. You take one foul shot and it's worth the equivalent of however many you're supposed to have.
This is a little bit related to that, but it's not really a rule change. It's just kind of a nuanced thing. I'm just wanting your opinions on it. And I think that's a pretty good rule, Mode. I think there's definitely ways that could and should be implemented, because like we've talked about, the last 2 minutes, the last 5 minutes sometimes are just such a slog.
It can be a chore.
Do you think if somebody makes both of their free throws, if they're fouled off a pass, do you think that should count as an assist?
No, because you can't have a game where you have more assists than made field goals.
Okay. That's a really good response. I've never heard that as the response to it, but I think you just changed my opinion on that, because I've always felt that it should. And now I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, if there's a game that's just foul city, shit. Okay.
Trust me. Can you have more assists than field goals?
I think it just becomes a little bit too wacky.
I think it'd be ugly. It would be a kind of disrespectful to the complete idea of the game.
Yeah, and I've thought about this a lot. I've also thought about it for football, where like for pass interference, you should get credit for the yards. But I mean, that one I think makes a little bit more sense for the assist one. But yeah, I
think the receiver should get credits for the yards, the quarterback should.
But then again, I just think it's like you have a game where a receiver is more receiving yards than there is passing yards. Like I just think that screws up statistics. Because
I mean, it's a little bit weird, but like, I mean, you'd have to like look into that. Like most people like are concerned with fantasy football purposes. Like it sucks when you're like fantasy guy is wide open, they're about to get the catch, and they get like interfered with. Like so, I for that reason, I think they should get the points.
For fantasy football, I think we should tailor sports for people that are betting on it and for people that are playing fantasy on it. I think that would make the game of sport better. Anyways, Griffin, did you think of your last one, or was it the assist one? Was that your last one that I just?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't my last one. That was just I'm glad that you had brought that up, because it made me think of it. Because I think about that a lot, where there are some games, and like, look, I think about this from the perspective of I've been a John Wall fan as long as he's been in the league, and there are so many instances where John Wall would hit a beautiful pass to somebody, and then he ended up finishing the game with like 7 assists or something like that, when really, truly, he should have like 16, because he contributed to so many more points than actually show up in the box score. And like NBA GMs know that, and scouts know that, and like if you watch a game, you know that. But if you're just like talking about the best passers of all time, you might not necessarily see that in the box score. So I do ask this question selfishly. My final one, and we see it in the All-Star game, they introduced it in the All-Star game a few years ago, is that I think we should introduce a final target score.
The Elam ending?
The Elam ending. And as long as a game, I think we should introduce it as long as a game is within a certain boundary by the time it gets to the fourth quarter. If you're 35 points below the other team and you get to the fourth quarter, I don't think you should be eligible for it. I think basically just like let those last 12 minutes run out, play the game the way you would normally play it. But if, you're only 10 under, or you're 12 under, or something like that, I think it'll improve the last 12 minutes of play, or even potentially the last 6 minutes of play, or whatever the target score may be. Because I think, fourth quarters used to be the most exciting period in basketball, and people used to talk about how fourth quarter is when the game really started. And progressively more and more, fourth quarters are the worst part of a basketball game. and a lot of that has to do with the way guys play at the end.
Yeah, the Elam ending I think is super interesting. There's some tweaking that needs to be done to make it perfect. I do like the idea of every single game there's a game-winning shot. I haven't thought about this specific rule change a ton. I do like the idea of making teams, instead of just waiting out the clock in the fourth quarter, actually still needing to try and score. I do think that it would mess with, so if there's a target score, what if teams just go cold and there's a game that goes on for 60 minutes of game time, not OT related, instead of just a regular 48? I don't know how much that actually affects things, but that is a possibility. There's something to think of. But yeah, I mean, the concept of the Elam ending, I'm on board with for sure, because there's sometimes where, so much with especially in the regular season, the NBA, it's just blowout city, that the fourth quarter is not even worth watching. It's like that Warriors run with when they started, I think 26-0 or something. Mm-hmm. Like Steph Curry never played in any fourth quarter.
Yeah, there was no need to. That third quarter, I mean, in the third quarter, they were the best team, I think, of all time. Yeah, they were the most effective third quarter team of all time. They were outscoring teams like 30-13. It was turning close competitive games into blowouts. And then we were watching bench units play against bench units in the fourth constantly with what should have been the most exciting team of all time to watch. And it was cool for this is the first time we've ever seen something this dominant, but it just wasn't a ton of fun. Is my internet crapping out too, Modi?
Yeah, it's both of them.
Awful. This is Elliot's fault. This is why we don't let him talk on the pod.
I know. I don't know. We still got viewers though. This is the most viewers we've ever had. So people must.
Don't say that. Don't ever say something like that. We get thousands of viewers every single episode, and hopefully people can hear me say that, and they'll tune in for the next one. I think we all gave at least 3 rule changes. We ended up not sticking to the whole 3 apiece, but I'm fine with that because nobody's ranking these lists. Anything else you guys want to chat shit about? You want to get out of here?
Excited to watch the last, there's eight episodes of season 1 of One Piece.
8 episodes. I think hopefully by the time we record next week, we will have all finished the show. Ferentinos will be back next week from Italy. I want to believe that he will probably finish the show as well. It'll probably be the first thing he does when he lands.
No, he's an airplane watcher, he said.
He's a what?
He'll watch on the airplane.
Yeah, right. He's going to watch on the airplane because he's a psychopath. If there was a rule that I could change in modern society, it'd be near the top of my list that you're not allowed to watch things you care about on an airplane, because I think that's unhinged.
I disagree with that. I also think that if we're actually making modern society rule changes, that wouldn't actually be that high on your list.
It'd be pretty high. I'll tell you, it'd be higher than you might think. I'm worried about criminals and capitalism and our political system, but I'm also tired of looking over at somebody watching a dark, gritty, atmospheric thriller on their fucking phone while we're on a flight. I think that's absurd.
I watch every show on my phone.
I think we need to dig into this in the future because
we will.
Because I fail to see why it's such a big deal. Unless you're watching something that kids shouldn't be watching. If that was your argument, I would understand. But that's not what your argument is. It's just you shouldn't be doing it. And I think you should let people live their lives. If they want to watch something on the airplane. No,
they don't get to live their lives. I get to live their lives. I get to make the rules here. Did I tell you, before we get out of here, did I tell you guys last week or on a previous week what one of the passengers next to Julia was watching on a flight recently?
I think so, but I can't remember. So repeat it.
They were watching the show Hijack from Apple TV.
Oh yes,
with Idris Elba, which I'm sure it's a great show, and I do think it's probably not one that you want to watch if you can't hear things, but just an absurd show to watch on a flight.
Yeah, I'm not watching snakes on a plane while I'm on a plane.
just read the room.
Yeah,
what are we doing here?
If your argument is you can't watch anything about something going wrong on an airplane, I would also accept that take. But I think if people want to watch something on an airplane, they should be allowed to.
Well, your life sounds dumb. So we're going to get out of here. Elliot, glad to have you joining us in a speaking role for the majority of this episode before your internet crapped out. Modai, a pleasure as always. Like I said at the top of the show, make sure you click the subscribe button. Make sure you click the like button. And if you have any questions or comments, whether on the live stream or after the fact, make sure you comment below. Before we get out of here, I will say, Andrew in the chat saying, I watched Coda last time I was on a plane and came close to crying. I think you can cry on a plane, but I don't know if I would watch a movie about a deaf family on a plane. Because again, it's like not very atmospheric, but that's a rant for another time. We will be back next Wednesday, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. We will see you next time. Thank you for tuning in.
Peace.